Welcome to AQMD on the Air. I'm your host, Mark Carroll. Our guest today is the Assistant Departmental Engineer for one of the AQMD's largest permit holders, the LA County Sanitation District. He's responsible for air quality programs, including all permitting and related activities for wastewater and solid waste management activities, and is actively involved in a number of air quality policy committees and advisory groups. Let's welcome Mr. Greg Adams. Thank you for joining us, Greg.
My pleasure.
Let's first start with some background. Can you tell us what the LA County Sanitation District does?
Let me start off by telling you how we got here in the first place. We were constituted by an act of the legislature in 1923. I believe the LA County Sanitation Districts were formed in 1925. Our charter was for the collection and treatment of wastewater. In the early to mid 50s, we became involved in solid waste collection and transfer. And a little known fact perhaps for some of the people listening within the AQMD is that when the Board of Supervisors in 1957 ordered the cessation of backyard incinerators, that actually coincided in LA County with our opening of the Palos Verdes landfill and the Spadra landfill to accept that waste that otherwise was being burned in backyard incinerators. Our systems have grown on both the wastewater and the solid waste side. On the wastewater side, we have 11 treatment plants that collect sewage from about 5.7 million people in LA County. The balance is collected by the city of LA, roughly an equal size system, but perhaps not the same number of treatment plants. We serve 78 cities and unincorporated area. On the solid waste side, we are currently managing 3 active landfills. We manage 4 landfill gas-to-energy facilities. We have 3 material recovery facilities / transfer facilities, and we are partners in 2 refuse-to-energy facilities, one in the city of Long Beach and one in the city of Commerce. On the wastewater side, we have about 1,400 miles of trunk sewers, larger diameter sewers that we ourselves actually maintain. And keeping all of this infrastructure going certainly involves an enormous amount of people, and is my raison d'etre, because we have a lot of air permits. Right. We do so much recyclable waste, so much landfill gas and digested gas recovery out of our sewage treatment processes, that we're a very active permittee for your agency.
And so, as one of the largest permittees, you're getting permits all the time. What would you say is your philosophy and your priorities of the LA County Sanitation District with regard to meeting air quality standards?
Our air quality priority is very high. Bear in mind, we have a legislative mandate to take care of the wastewater that's discharged in the basin, as well as to manage the solid waste. But in the process of doing that, we also try to comply with all of the other regulatory agencies that deem fit to regulate the waste industry. We are probably one of the most heavily regulated industries there is out there. I think we share a unique relationship with the Air Quality Management District. I think we understand each other very, very well. We really can't coexist without our air permits, and it's again, it's been my job in life to make sure that that relationship proceeds as smoothly as possible. Our charter, our mandate is very, very clear, and our words are very, very carefully selected. We believe our duty is to protect the public health, to protect the environment, and we want to do that in an innovative way, and there's lots of examples of what innovative means, and we want to do it in a cost-effective way. We think that that's very important for local government to deliver cost-effective services. And in the process of doing all that, we take the waste and we convert them into energy, and recycled water and recycled goods.
I understand that the LA County Sanitation District was a major supporter of Senate Bill 827, which was state legislation that ended a moratorium on AQMD's ability to issue permits for local projects and equipment in the South Coast Basin. How did the passage of this legislation make a difference for the Sanitation District? And specifically, what kind of projects were impacted that have a connection to clean air?
The 827 process was long and tortuous. It was very important to us, being one of the district's largest permittees. We are constantly at the door of the permitting teams in terms of modifying our facilities to accommodate population growth and to accommodate new mandates, new regulatory mandates, be it from a regional water quality control board standpoint, or some other directive. Being in the waste business, we are probably one of the most heavily regulated industries in the state of California. We are constantly responding to a variety of concerns, and consequently have to modify our facilities, and consequently we are a very active permit holder. The 2009 moratorium was very, very painful for us. We had to do a lot of workarounds. We couldn't even permit emergency standby generators to reduce the possibility of sewage flows or spills from pumping plants and treatment plants. The poster child project, though, that actually was held up as a result of that moratorium was our Puente Hills landfill gas to energy project. That was a repowering project, taking an old steam power plant, which is on its last legs, and we were going to replace that equipment with a fuel cell, I think 8 or 9 microturbines. We were going to put in a brand new, state-of-the-art, low-NOx flare, which had never been demonstrated before, and we were willing to test out that technology. And ultimately, because of the prolonged period of that moratorium, coupled with the astronomical cost of emission reduction credits, all of those coupled together, they delayed the project to the point that gas quality deteriorated, and we could no longer justify putting in the original power plant. It's my personal feeling that all of the people in LA County and in the district suffered as a result of that. And the reason is why? Because of all the buzzwords that you hear about renewable energy and green energy and fuels and maximizing our resources and reducing global warming and greenhouse gases, all of that, and reducing toxics. By putting in some of that newer equipment, we could have lowered the small amount of toxics that the community was exposed to. We could have done that. We couldn't do that with the moratorium. That's why I say everybody hurt. But that was the poster child. And
what's happened to that project since?
That project now, the fact that the gas now, the quality and the quantity has deteriorated to the point that it still is not a viable project. So now we're just only putting in one very small aspect of the project, the low NOx flare, which is actually a backup flare to existing flare.
So technology to help clean the air you weren't able to install.
That is correct. Yeah, and that's wrong. It is very, very clearly wrong. And there were other projects from other landfill operators that also were held back, and that clearly was not right. Those projects should have been allowed to proceed, but they were caught in this moratorium.
Well, that was a state issue, and turning now to the federal issue that's currently before AQMD, which is the fact that the South Coast Air District has to reach attainment by the National Ambient Air Quality Standards for ozone by 2010, and by not meeting that deadline, Section 185 of the Clean Air Act goes into play, which requires AQMD to collect a fee from major stationary sources. Now, AQMD sees this as unfair because these businesses have achieved a control level upwards of 90%, and stationary sources themselves provide less than 20% of the emissions in this region. over 80% of the pollution in the air basin, as you know, comes from emissions from mobile sources, such as the thousands of diesel-powered trucks and locomotives at the ports of LA and Long Beach, for instance, which together make up the nation's largest port complex. And so our region suffers tremendously, not only from the vehicles on the roads, but from these other vehicles which are federally regulated. But the Sanitation District has worked a little bit with the AQMD to try to address this issue. Can you share your perception of what AQMD's efforts have done to work with business in the South Coast Basin, and what's for what's perceived to be an unfair fee, and how the LA Sanitation District has been a part of these efforts?
That's quite a long story too. The Section 185 fee proposals have been identified in various air quality management plans since I believe 1994. And to be completely honest with you, the proposal that we recently saw this month, January 2011, represents an outstanding effort on the part of the AQMD staff to resolve this fundamentally unfair fee for all the reasons that you articulated. But Mark, it didn't exactly start out that way. I think that we have been at this 185 issue for well over 2 years, and I think the district initially was going to take a much more painful route, for instance, by following this, what I call the Sacramento rule, which was, hey, thou shalt be in compliance with Section 185. But I think that through many hours of discussion and much soul searching, particularly on the part of the small business community that we certainly strongly supported, that the staff then did almost a complete turnaround and aggressively sought the solution that we hope we have with this last version of the rule, which should go before the board in February. We cannot thank the staff enough for their efforts in coming up with this alternative fee proposal, and which indeed will hold harmless many of the smaller sources that at this particular time in our economy, and given the fact that so many of these smaller sources are at back levels, how it would be unfair to ask them to reduce their emissions by another 20%. And again, for all those other reasons that you articulated, we think that this proposal is very good. We participated again in all of these discussions, the numerous discussions with staff. We went back to Washington, D.C. several times, sometimes alone, by the way, to meet with the assistant administrator, and then in conjunction with your staff, and have participated upon any request by the AQMD to make our voices heard as to how important this issue has been. And again, we're very pleased with this version of the rule that hopefully will go before the board in February.
Well, I know that you've participated a lot on that issue, but you've personally demonstrated a leadership role in a variety of AQMD's committees and working groups, and especially your work on the local government, small business, and home rule advisory groups, as well as the advisory council for the air quality management plan. What would you tell people about the importance of getting involved in the regulatory process and participating in AQMD's processes, and the difference that can make in cleaning the air?
Well, clearly, my experience has been, now admittedly I'm involved in a lot of committees because I do this full time as a living. But clearly, my experience is that when you become involved, you certainly can affect change, and I think that's the message that I really want to get across. I think as an organization, the AQMD, hands down across the board, throughout the state, I think even when you compare with any other organization in the state of California, I think you have the best outreach program in the state, and for people not to take advantage of that and not to become educated in the issues is their loss. And I think fundamentally you are good listeners. I think that while it might take time to invest time with you and your staff to understand the issues and to get you to see our point, I think is worth the amount of time that we actually do invest with you.
That's great. How would you characterize our approach to crafting and implementing the air quality regulations that we put forward?
Well, there was the AQMD of old, and I think there's the AQMD of now. The AQMD of old, might have been somewhat heavy-handed, but I personally think that that was necessary. I think that, for instance, the 1989 AQMP and 94 AQMPs contained so many control measures that there was little or no alternative but to crank out all of those rules. And I remember that decade of the 90s being incredibly busy. I was over here at a meeting every single day, it seemed, regarding some rulemaking. And now, though, I think things are changed. All the low-hanging fruit is gone. I think that with the new ambient air quality standards, the fact that maybe whenever that new ozone standard comes out, let's say by the end of this year,
right,
we're going to be in a situation, the executive officer is suggesting that this is going to be a combustionless basin by 2030. And if that's the case, I think that we need to come up with a more comprehensive and certainly a more business-friendly solution rather than just a command and control type of approach. And we've got to do this in conjunction with our economic partners, and I think that we need to come up with a slightly different approach to get cooperation rather than opposition when we try to move forward on meeting those new standards.
Well, the standards play a big role in obviously what AQMD is trying to do, and if you had your thoughts, if you could share your thoughts on the three main things that AQMD could do in terms of clean air projects in order to achieve those health standards, what would they be?
First of all, let me tell you, I don't envy your task. I think you have a very, very difficult task in front of you. I think the thing that concerns me the most is the coinciding of all of the national ambient air quality standards changing or being changed within a period of approximately 2 years. Right. I believe that 5 of the 6 standards have been changed or are soon to be changed. I think that fundamentally we must work together to implement the national ambient air quality standard in a cooperative fashion, and if that means informing people earlier rather than later that, hey, this is going to be a combustionless basin, and maybe institute a 10-year program so that sinks in, so that people come to the table and they understand ultimately we have to get to that point. That's got to be the #1 and key program for us. That still doesn't change the fact that if we shut down all the stationary sources, the basin is still probably not going to come into attainment. Right. So obviously there has to be another major component. The other major component, I think, has to be, or control measure 2, so to speak, has to be what the district is already doing, but perhaps we have to really devote resources to it, are the federal sources, are the sources that are regulated by the federal government, planes, ship, boats, planes, and trains, things like that. And I think that we need to aggressively come up with some type of understanding with EPA that we cannot, and Congress perhaps, that we cannot get to where we need to go unless there is full-fledged buy-in to the same degree that stationary and mobile sources in California are also contributing to the solution. And then the third area, I think, and it's funny, I just heard it mentioned by Ms. Jane Carney at the last board meeting. It's the first time I've ever heard a board member articulate it, is that is that we have to bring the local citizenry into a control measure somehow. The average citizen doesn't really know or understand what is going on or what their role is. They might possibly be impacted by a rideshare program. They might possibly be impacted by a fee that they have to pay every couple of years to get their vehicle smog checked. But for the most part, that's about it. There's a carpool lane over here that they see on the side of the freeway, but there's no personal integration of air quality management plan objectives into their own personal lives. That has got to change. And even my own wife, for instance, when she comes home at night, I tell this to her, she'll flip on every light there is in the house. She says, because she's afraid of tripping. I think it's out of habit. And I think that that type of behavior needs to be changed. I think that everybody can do things a lot more efficiently, reduce their driving trips, educate the children more as to what they can do to improve air quality. But that's a component, a major component that has been missing in all previous attempts to achieve our national ambient air quality standards.
That's great. Well, Greg Adams, Assistant Departmental Engineer for the LA County Sanitation District, thank you for joining us and for your continued leadership in helping us clean the air. And thank you for watching AQMD on the Air. Visit us at cleanairconnections.org to find out how you can help us clean the air that we breathe.
Let's work together.